It is the Stag Beetle starter of Medarot DS that debuted in 2010, finally getting his turn with the tune-up treatment for some extra bonuses and perks. It is KWG10 Sanjuuro, REGRADED, with a kit of Commander, Charge Blade, Thunder, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Dead or Alive, which buffs all leg stats, minus armor and heavy limit, for every critical hit that Sanjuuro lands. Now, compared to most other members of the KWG family, Sanjuuro tends to take a very unique and unorthodox approach to being an all-rounder in the sense of being a conventional fighter. He doesn't use standard sword and hammer attacks like most of his other brethren do, but his new approach allows him a better chance at overall maneuverability while being just as aggressive, if not more, on the field anytime that he takes the scene. Commander on the head part is a support-based skill that, when activated, will grant a stack of radar sight to everyone on the team, which is 50% of success to everyone on the field, but will also grant a stack of stealth to himself. While this is active, it does mean that Sanjuuro will be completely untouchable for his next cooldown and his heat phase, allowing him to bypass any shields that are in effect, as well as attacking exactly who he wants. While the radar side effect also does allow everyone else to bypass any conceal or stealth effects that are also applied to the enemy side. They try to hide, they try to stay behind or get more dodgy. Sanjuuro says, "No sir, this is exactly where you're fighting and you are now my target," especially given that the stealth effect allows him to attack exactly who he wants, entirely unhindered. Charge Blade on the right arm is a standard conventional melee skill that gets a damage bonus relative to the amount of charge the user has in their charge gauge. The more of a charge by percent, the stronger of an attack it is. At the cost, it does eat just a small amount of charge, about a 5% or so when fully capped at 5 or 6 star, 10% if not. You will consume a small amount of charge, but that damage bonus you get for it will absolutely feed itself back in very easily and very quickly, making him probably one of the more aggressive of the more conventional Stag Beetle types. Thunder on the left arm is an ailment type skill that allows Sanjuuro to stop enemies in their tracks and stun them, allowing Sanjuuro to buy himself just a few extra precious moments of time, or anyone else on the field for that matter, by stopping them with a paralyzed ailment. During this, it does mean that they are still able to defend against attacks, they just can't dodge them. It does also mean that any shields that are active will still be allowed to intercept any incoming blows. But if you just need to stop the enemy just to buy yourself a couple seconds, it is still a very solid ailment skill that you can make use of very quickly and very easily. The biped legs means he'll have pretty solid coverage across most terrains pretty reliably, and the Dead or Alive ability honestly makes his relatively decent, and that's being somewhat generous, his decent leg stats just a little bit better over time for every crit he scores. But given that he can pair Commander and Charge Blade fairly reliably, it really shouldn't be too terribly difficult for him to score critical hits, but you just need to make sure that you can absolutely stack on them where possible, as the more crits he scores, the higher his leg stats go, which means he'll go faster, he'll become more dodgy, and just a little bit better at his overall damage reduction, which is still kind of squishy at best considering the base stats. Now when it comes to his overall tune-up bonuses, much like it was with Gun Nose, Sanjuuro is one of those models where they're nice to have, but they're not going to be bonuses that you need to absolutely farm for or really push for either. So it's going to be one of those models you kind of just push for if you really like Sanjuuro, but they're not going to overly break or change how he performs on the field. His head part has an access to plus 100 to armor, 100 to heat, or plus 300 to cool. Now, as I've said in other videos, that plus 100 really won't be super noticeable at first glance, if I'm being completely real with you, and for the amount of tune-up bonuses, tune-up points required to actually obtain that full 100, it's going to be not really worth it. Whereas that plus 300 to cool absolutely is, as it means that he'll have a much easier time cooling down from activating Commander, so he can prepare his next attack to bypass anyone in his way, and pretty much repeat back and forth what he can do by hiding in the shadows and then striking where nobody expects him. His right arm has access to plus 100 to heat, 100 to cool, and a 50% additional damage modifier relative to your charge percent. Now, honestly, alone, the charge percentage and the modifier was honestly pretty solid on Charge Blade by itself at a ×2, I believe. So that extra 50% at ×2.5 is going to be really, really nice to have. as it means that it's going to hit a whole lot harder, even if you don't have a lot of charge. Especially when you're at full charge, it absolutely will cut enemies down to size, as long as you can maintain it. The only real problem with Sanjuuro is the fact that he is not charge reliant in any form, in any kind of degree. And in this case, he shares the same problem as Adolfin does, who also has Charge Blade. So it does mean that you will have to kind of alternate between starting at no charge with Charge Blade and Thunder to kind of get a charge going before you can maintain it. But that extra damage bonus will be nice to have if you are able to maintain it. The extra bonuses, Heat and Cool, honestly, you can go either, you can really go either direction with it. I'm not going to dictate or recommend. It's honestly going to be based on preference. With his left arm, he has access to plus 100 to Heat and Cool as well, much like his right arm, but his left arm of Thunder gets a Symptom Plus bonus, which will extend the duration that enemies remain stunned. And that, honestly, is probably going to be the most reliable and consistent bonus that Sanjuuro has at his disposal. Primarily because the longer an enemy remains stunned, which traditionally is usually about a one full Heat Cool phase, maybe 1.5, possibly 2 if you are stupidly fast, that extra duration means that you will have just a little bit more time to recoup or rebuild or even plan your next hit without having to really worry about the enemy recovering or coming back after you anytime soon. So that naturally is the best bonus to shoot after. Anything after that, Heat and Cool, again, it's going to be completely up to you, based on how you want to build Sanjuuro. His legs have access to plus 100 to armor, plus 200 to evade, plus 120 to mobility, and S rank on grassland terrain. Now, when it comes to mobility, Sanjuuro definitely fared a whole lot better than his counterpart of Gunnose, with the base mobility in the mid 700s already, so he was already in that fair sweet spot, not super fast like his other brethren, but still there in that nice where you want to be spot. But that extra plus 120 will definitely pump him over the 800 mark and absolutely make him a lot faster, a little more nimble, and allow him to be able to keep up with the bigger dogs and the faster bots, especially when competitive PvP is involved. Armor and evade. The extra plus 100 to armor is probably going to be more noticeable than, say, to Heat or Cool, so that's going to be completely up to you, but an extra 200 or even less than to mobility will probably be the most notable and next best recommended upgrade on there, as it means that his already fair evade will get just a little bit better, and it does mean he'll have a pretty fair time, or an easier time I should say, dodging or grazing a lot of incoming blows. The S rank on grassland terrain, again, nice to have, but you don't need it, because that extra 10% you get really won't be a make or break to you, and if you have to use Sanjuuro's legs on grassland terrain, you probably already have at least a handful of other options at your disposal already. Taking this into account, his original pure set and mixed parts scores, I did originally grade him at a solid 8 out of 10 across the board. He is still pretty solidly well-rounded and synergetic, whether as mixed parts or pure sets. Even if his blade is charge reliant, you can still kind of go without it for the first couple hits, and still fight with him pretty reliably. Taking into account his new tune-up bonuses though, I very easily have to grade him at an 8 out of 10 for his pure set and maintain that, but bump his mixed parts up to an 8.5 out of 10. Charge Blade and Commander you probably won't use super often, but Thunder and Biped Legs probably will be the most valuable bonuses on there, with the extended duration that you can stun an enemy, and slightly higher bonuses, or even the Charge Blade if you decide to use it will be very good all the same.